I really like this movie. Buffalo Bill and the Indians or Sitting Bull's History Lesson, a very long title from the great American director Robert Altman, his second Western in the 1970s. The first one, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, is very highly praised as a fabulous movie. I actually like this movie a little bit better, and it was surprising to me. I went to watched it, liked it, looked around the internet, and a lot of people just hate it all over the place. Amazon.com, Letterboxd.com, 3.2 out of 5 rating. I was really surprised this film was getting hammered, and I'm not entirely sure why, because you get all of the Altman trappings. It's very loosely structured. I think it does definitely have a structure, but it's not discernible, wide-ranging cast of characters. I think this movie is pretty easy to follow, though. So in my opinion, 3.2 out of 5 is way underrated. I think this is better than anybody else says. I found it in Criterion Collections online. It may not still be around, but on their streaming service. It was an Ethan Hawke's recommended film curated collection, so I finally found it there. And now it came out in 1976, so the 200th year anniversary bicentennial of the United States. And I was expecting some bitterness, even some dark satire like Altman's MASH, for example. Now, it does have that, but it's more, to me, wry humor. The film stars Paul Newman as William Cody, and it features him in his Wild West show in the late 19th century, where he put on these huge exhibitions of what the Wild West was like. And this is really at the period of the closing of the American frontier, so-called. This was the time where we're celebrating it in entertainment, sort of making it up and making it legendary, but also kind of making it phony and fake a little bit. The movie then shows Paul Newman looking like a lion, but having a mane, and yet it's a partial wig he's wearing, so it's kind of phony, and that's sort of the gist of this character. And he plays basically a studio executive, really the executive of the show. He's the actor and director and star of the show, with helpers like the producer, played by Joel Grey, the publicist, played wonderfully by Kevin McCarthy. Great cast of characters in this movie all around. And really, the central problem in the movie, or one of them, I think this is it, is that Buffalo Bill wants Sitting Bull to be in the show. They're using African American characters in the show to play Indians. It's not really working out. It's not very realistic. So actually could get the real Sitting Bull to be in a Wild West show. Wouldn't that be a catch? Now, as you know, Sitting Bull was the head or chief during Custer's last stand, and he resisted U.S. government invasion or intrusion into his territory for a long time. It's really odd to think about him being in a Wild West show like this. I know there were historical circumstances for it, but it would be like, and I know, not calling him this, but like some U.S. government enemy or a terrorist being in a Hollywood movie and being the star of the movie and an attraction. That would be like what Sitting Bull in a Wild West show is kind of like. But yet in this movie, you get him, and the movie honors Sitting Bull, loves him. Very nice contrast with the Paul Newman, William Cody character. And Sitting Bull wants what he wants. He's got all the leverage. He's not willing to negotiate. He wants some odd and interesting things. He does interesting things to Cody. And I think this movie, although it has a little bit of cynicism, especially with Cody, who's a vain jerk. He's very phony in a lot of ways. He's bombastic, as you would expect from a showman like P.T. Barnum or later Hollywood types. He really is likened to a studio executive. And then Sitting Bull's like a strange or eccentric movie star that the executive's trying to attract into his entertainment spectacle. You have that contrast along with a general white versus Indian contrast, cowboy versus native. And I really like that in this movie, how the Sitting Bull sort of upstages Cody, because this is a revisionist Western where the Indians, I think, come off a little bit better than the whites, although I think this movie does really love Cody because he is a proto-director, proto-movie studio executive. And to me, one of the great visionary ideas in this movie is that those Buffalo Bill Wild West shows, I don't know if this is historically true, I don't know if you can make the argument, but those Wild West shows are the proto version of the movie industry, which would come 10, 15, 20 years later, not very long after these Wild West shows, in fact, was being invented as these giant Wild West stage shows were on display. So some of these stage shows had big problems like trying to corral a big star, trying to pay for productions, trying to publicize and market things. just as the movie studios very soon after would do. This movie makes the connection between those two kinds of entertainment. So Cody has a tough time getting Sitting Bull to be in the show and to do things the right way in the show. Later in the movie, the President of the United States and his First Lady, newly married, show up. It's Grover Cleveland, and very interesting what happens with Sitting Bull and Grover Cleveland in this movie. I absolutely love that stuff as well. Also adding to the cast is Burt Lancaster playing the, quote, legend maker, and he starts to tell us about William Cody's exploits. He's actually telling somebody in the movie this. A little bit of postmodernism here because he's telling us about Cody's exploits. We see Cody in the movie behind the scenes. The exploits are earlier in his life, shooting buffaloes, hunting Indians, but now doing the Wild West show, he's sort of a businessman, as it were. The legend maker, though, meets up with Cody later in the movie. It's kind of a nice postmodern scene where the storyteller meets the character in a sense. And this movie is upgrading or updating The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the idea that the West is an invention, it's a fantasy. The stage shows are kind of doing that already, and then the movie says, well, what is America? What are ideas about America? Are they invented? Are they bombastic? Do they come from entertainment? You know, Altman's playing around. I feel like this movie is very playful, less cynical, less juvenile than some earlier 70s or 1960s fairs that like to criticize the United States, which is all fine and good, but I feel things are a little bit more adult in this movie, which I appreciate quite a bit. The thoughtfulness with all the characters in the scenario. Of course, this is one of Altman's favorite scenarios to show the backstage antics, the inside baseball stuff, what happens behind the scenes of a show as it's being put on. So just know that one of my favorite critics, Gene Siskel, put this at number 8 in 1976, his 8th favorite movie. Some people will like this, I believe. I can't claim that everybody will, but I think this movie needs to be resurrected a little bit because people just love Altman, and I don't love all Altman movies, but this one I actually kind of like. So what do you think of this movie about Buffalo Bill and the Indians and Paul Newman, etc.? Please let us know in the comments. Let me know if I'm right or wrong, or how we should watch it, how we could appreciate this movie. Thanks a lot. Please subscribe to this channel for more great content. Have a great day.